Good evening, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to episode 9 of Learn Live UAE. This evening's episode focuses on the importance of our online reputation as educators and how to go about navigating and managing your own online reputation. And I know from a little pre-discussion with the guests in the lobby before we went live, we're going to talk about the importance of professional learning networks, and a load of really other valuable bits of information to share with you. I won't speak anymore because I don't want to steal their thunder, but what I will really happily share is our three guests tonight. So we've got Baz Nijjar, who's from GEM's First Point School. He's the head of Centre of Excellence there. It's a school in Dubai. He's also a digital learning network lead, and you can find him on social media at Mr. Nijjar _. Our second guest of the evening is Mark Ryan. He's the founder of hashtag Run and Rant, which is a global professional learning network, an amazing support network. He's also a PYP Arts specialist at Raha International School, and also he podcasts as well. So look out for that. And you can find him on Twitter at either at Run and Rant or at Run Educator. And our third guest this evening is Adam Llevo, who's the creator of at Charged Up Edu, which is a massive, really successful professional learning network and online professional development, a kind of series of webinars for PE teachers across the world. He's a former lecturer. He's a Google certified innovator and trainer. So we've got some really experienced and fascinating educators from across the sector within the region as well. So really looking forward to hear what they've got to say this evening.
Yeah, massively so. Really looking forward to hearing from all of them. And welcome to our viewers here this evening. Can't believe we're on episode 9 already, Ollie. Where has that time gone? You're breaking up for your summer holidays in just a very few days, aren't you?
Yeah, only a couple more get-ups, 3 more get-ups for everybody in the Middle East. So I think we're really looking forward to a bit of a break. But it's been an awesome learning curve, I think, for everybody. The continuation of learning. And I think it's been great to actually get some information from the MOE about what we are allowed to do come September. So we won't talk about that too much because that's episode 10 next week. Perhaps we might talk about that at the end of the show, Mark. What have you been up to this week, mate?
Well, do you know what? Today's been a fantastic day. I mean, I got up first thing this morning and did a session. I'm doing the work with Q and Microsoft. So I delivered a session this morning looking at how you can use Microsoft 365 to support assessment and feedback. So that was 9 o'clock this morning. Then 10 o'clock this morning, I had, so bearing in mind I'm 3 hours behind you as well, but 10 o'clock this morning, I had a meeting with the EdTech development team at King's Al Pasha. With Russell Smart and Mike Music. I've had a fantastic meeting with them this morning. And then a bit later on today, something that you're really, really pleased with, I know, I launched with Al Kingsley and Net Support, our second version of our guide to creating a digital strategy, which is now out there. So please do check mine and Ollie's Twitter feeds, and where you can download that as a free guide, full packed with case studies and real examples of the things you should be thinking about when it comes to your digital strategy across your school. So really, really pumped about that, Ollie. It's taken us months to put together, as you know. And we first started talking about a case study from yourself quite a long while ago. So really, really pleased to be able to pull together so many different educators' experiences and points of view around making all things digital work. Is a huge issue for schools, particularly now when we're relying on it more than ever with the distance learning that's been happening for such a long time. How's your week been? Just counting down till Thursday. I suspect you've had a lot of staff virtual get-togethers or meals.
We myself and the science department met up last night for a socially distanced meal just to sort of round the year off, which was really, really nice.
That's fantastic.
We've had, student celebration assemblies virtually. Tomorrow we've got a staff celebration assembly. So it's all going off, as well as trying to plan for the start of next year. So it's been a busy week, but a good week, because you feel like you're making massive strides, planning for what's going to happen in 6 to 7, 8 weeks time, whenever next term starts. 23rd of August, that's it. So yeah, it's been a really good week. Also moving house next week, mate. So trying to plan for well, but enough of that. Let's welcome in our first guest, I think, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. And a big shout out to Osama, who is joining us this evening in the watching us live. Lucky to have met you myself as well, Osama, and thank you for joining us. Lots to discuss during the episode this evening. So let's just bring Baz right on in. Hiya, how you doing?
Hi guys. Hi Mark. Hi Holly.
Hi Baz.
So how are things with you? Do you live in Dubai with the work at Gems First Prince? Is that right?
Yeah, living in Dubai. Been here 5 years now. Still enjoying it, but have not spent a summer here, so this is a new experience.
Yeah. How are you planning for the summer? And have you planned any staycations, or are you just gonna kind of roll with it and see what happens?
Yeah, I think given the situation, it just depends how brave you are, and I think we're on that borderline at the moment. So gone from being recluses and staying indoors to now venturing out a little bit with the little one as well. We just need to ensure that the safety is a priority. But given the circumstances and given how people are experiencing staycations, it seems like things are under control. So you do want to take advantage of that, because it is difficult when you can't go for walks in 40 odd degrees. And I know people from the UK always look at us when we complain about the heat, but it is difficult to enjoy the time. But I think as soon as places are starting to open now, it's just time to take advantage and just be careful and sensible. I think that's the way we have to live with this situation.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's difficult when it is so hot as well. You want to enjoy it, but actually being out for just a very short period of time is difficult for a whole bunch of reasons. I remember getting sunburned in sort of 10 minutes. One time when I was working in Abu Dhabi, literally, the band across my forehead. I mean, you've had problems yourself with that. Go out without a hat.
I went to the course, and that was not a good look the next day. I was positively like a lobster at school.
Tell me about how long have you been using Twitter yourself, Baz, as someone, and particularly related to your use to connect with other educators and to sort of use it for professional learning and networking. How long has that been for you?
It's an interesting question, because looking back, you think you've only been using it for maybe 1 to 2 years, but I've actually had the account for maybe 6, 7 years, if not longer. But usually I've just had it open and just been browsing, or trying to look at how people are communicating, what's the latest trends and so forth. So kind of being a lurker, I think, as they would say. But without realizing, you just when you look at your own account, it's been there for many, many years.
How in the context of your position within your current school, how are you sort of promoting the use of professional learning networks to drive professional learning in-house?
It's one of those things. I think I'm not sure how many schools actually have it part of their CPD program, and if they do, how much do they actually train staff around it and promote it? Because if just mentioning or use Twitter or use LinkedIn or use these social media platforms, you're ticking off a box and people are then using them, and then you set up your official account as well as your maybe personal accounts. But I don't think there's a lot of training that goes on, and that's something that we're going to embed next year. I think this maybe stems more from the UK, but you also have that a little bit of reluctance in terms of the messages that you share, because you're professional, but also you want to showcase your personality, but you just got to be careful what you share and who with, and what what purpose you're using the account for. So I think that's why a lot of schools have strayed away from promoting social media. But given the right training and the right guidance, it can be a really, really powerful platform.
Yeah, I've massively found it powerful. I mean, I genuinely wouldn't be able to do the work I do now if it hadn't been for me being on social media all those years ago and starting sharing as I did. And it's a really difficult sort of thing to sort of navigate. It is murky waters. You worry about if I say something or I say I haven't had a good lesson? Will the parents see it? Will they complain about me? Will they, all those sort of fears of self-doubt. Teaching as a profession is just so rife with imposter syndrome at the best of times, without actually physically asking teachers as part of their role to go on and sort of use social media sort of for those purposes and things. I want to sort of come back with another question related to all of this, because people are giving me loads of advice about using social media over the years. But when you sort of first started using it yourself, did anyone give you any sort of advice about how to put yourself out there, how to present yourself, and all those sort of things? Did anyone share that sort of stuff with you, or did you just sort of like have a gut instinct about how to approach it?
Yeah, I mean, there was no training. It was just a case of, I think when I joined, it maybe wasn't even a big thing in terms of using it as a network. It was just a case of, maybe following key accounts and just seeing what the latest promotions were or what the latest trends were. Even the hashtags weren't that commonly used, back then. So there wasn't a lot of training around, especially for educators. And then I think, people like yourselves, when you started using it to promote content that we can actually use, that's when it became useful. Even now, I'm probably still at an early stage of my journey, even though I'm a user for many years. In terms of my actual online presence, it's still at a very, very early stage. So I'm starting that technically from stage one, and I'm interested myself to see what yourself and our guests share today, because I'll be using that moving forward.
Thank you. So the best piece of advice I was ever given, really, it's quite a simple one, but don't ever say anything that you wouldn't be prepared to say to your mum or your boss. It's common sense. But I do see teachers sometimes, letting rip a little bit and a few F's and Jeffs here and there, and I'm thinking that's not good, and particularly given this sort of, it's one thing doing that sort of thing here in the UK, but cultural sensitivity, being sensitive to all of those things, given where you are, is so important to be really careful about the way you put yourself across, how you present yourself, all those things. And so it's absolutely key to make that clear. I'm interested to find out, Ollie, you want to tell me for yours as well. Do you have a policy in your schools, and I guess it'd probably be similar for GEMS too, about engaging in social media? Because lots of teachers I talk with don't know the answers to that question, and when they go away and dig around and get in touch with the head's PA, find out, oh yes, they have got a policy around using social media, and then are quite scared about the fact they haven't sort of considered those sort of things. Have you got policies in your schools around the use of social media as a teacher?
Do you know what? I don't actually know. That's the honest answer. Is I'm not actually sure. I know that lots of members of our leadership team, as well as teachers, are on social media and they use it for professional learning. But I'm not sure as an institution we've actually got one directed at staff. We've got a school one in terms of how school approaches it, but not from the teacher's angle, which is quite interesting. I do know that, with Baz and our two guests, it is a massive part of what teachers kind of need in a way, because it gives you the checks and balances and it enables you to look at what other people are doing and learn from them. So I think it's the right thing that it is promoted within our school. Use it by all means, and we release a term in Professional Learning magazine, and there's always stuff on that about Twitter and people to follow from different curriculum areas. So yeah, I don't think we have a strict policy as such.
I've noticed, going to yours for a second, Ollie, you're part of a big group of schools. I'm noticing in our private chat, because we've got private chats, and in our private chat, Adam's in there, Adam Llevo, our guest on later, is talking about how this can be a sort of geography-based thing. But what you often find, particularly with sort of large school chains, these sorts of policies sit right behind everything else, and so it is incumbent upon teachers to read all of these small print and all of the policies there, because there are loads of things you do sign up to. In my previous roles, for example, I've been I've been normally the person whose job has been to create the school's accessible use policy when it comes to technology. And teachers was just like, to sign the box, but never read it, or not even be aware that it's there, or the sort of terms and conditions that are in there. Because for the most part, we're quite a morally driven profession, aren't we? And so we do the right thing. We ask questions when it's appropriate to move things forward and things. But I think it is really good advice to, if you haven't sort of seen these sort of things before, viewers, and you're thinking, oh, crikey, please do have a chat with your colleagues and see if you can find out, because I'm pretty confident that you'll find somewhere in there in your terms and conditions documents, something in there about how you put yourself across on social media. And that'll be there to safeguard not only yourself, but to also safeguard the children and the school within which you're working too. Ollie, do you have another question for Baz?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, have you ever been sort of the victim of any kind of negative attention on social media? And do you have any advice for anyone that, if you have?
I think it depends on your persona and how you use your account as well, because like maybe many others, I do have a personal account and I do have a professional account, and a professional one I don't use that much to communicate, but as I alluded to earlier, I'm starting at that stage now where I will be focusing on that over the next year. I guess the closest that I've been to that is making a post where I accidentally put the wrong image in the wrong context. It was, without going into too much detail of it, it was about a situation that was currently happening in the world, and the image that I'd chosen was like a doctored image, so it wasn't a real image, but it was one of like 3 that I had saved. And I just, when you're clicking on things, and that just reminded me of, you've got to be careful, because even though there was nothing wrong with it, somebody then picked up on it and said, well, why are you posting this? This is not real. And then you get called down and you feel a bit embarrassed by it, because it was like, well, actually, that's not what I meant to do with this post. So you can make easy mistakes like that, and that alludes to your online reputation, because let's say that went viral, it'd be the wrong way to go viral, even though there's nothing wrong with it. It just portrayed the wrong message, and then you get the wrong perception of the person posting it. It only takes 1 or 2 bad posts, just like it would take 1 or 2 bad comments, if you were face to face and talking to the wrong person, to ruin a reputation. So I would just suggest you've got to be careful in terms of what you're posting, and to try and keep your professional and personal lives separate where possible, but not to the point where your personality isn't showing. It's not a case of being a bot. It's just a case of finding that balance, because as you were saying before, whether you've seen a policy or not, you are a professional, and in the education sector it is unforgiving. So you've got to be aware of that at all times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's issues around copyright and all sorts of stuff. I worry about teachers when it comes to sharing images, for example.
Yeah.
Most teachers, I could be running an instance, and there could be, let's say, 100 teachers in the room when I'm doing a whole school session. I ask a question, if you're looking to, and you probably heard me say this before in a session, haven't you, Ollie? When you're looking for an image to use, to share, where do you get the image from? And everyone's like, Google Images. And how many of you tick the box to make sure it's a Creative Commons or a copyright-free image? Tumbleweed, and that's where sharing things like things such as Unsplash, Pixabay, these sorts of websites where you can get superbly high quality images and graphics and clip art and all this sort of stuff that you can use, which is copyright free. It's a fantastic resources that are out there. Ollie, I'm looking in our private chat, my friend, and I'm thinking we need to bring these guys in, because we're having multiple conversations here, and I think they want to try and join us. What do you think, Ollie?
Yeah, let's do it differently this week. Let's just get everybody in.
We normally do like Graham Norton move down the sofa sort of thing, but Adam particularly, I mean, he's typing faster than I can think with these messages down here. So let's shall I bring them both in, Ollie? Yeah, shall I just do that?
Bring them both in, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so here's Adam. Hi, Adam.
Hi, how are we all?
Yeah, good, thank you. And here's Mark as well. Welcome both.
Hey guys, nice to see you.
Hi, both.
So Just jump to you a second, Adam. You've been commenting in there a bit about teachers making resources that are copyrighted. Do you want to share what that's about there?
Yeah, I think we'll all notice that when teachers are making resources, and I ask a very similar question when I'm doing any sort of training about where do teachers get their images from, and a lot of, especially the younger teachers, are making lots of great resources, and I can see the pedagogical sense in it. But the images that they're using, they just search Google straight away and take the first image that they find, which tends to be a copyrighted image. And I see a lot of sharing websites that share resources, and that can be a problem because there are a lot of resources that are created that can be infringing copyright. Whereas if you use something like Google Slides, for example, to create the resource and search within that, then the images that are brought up within Google's Docs or Google Sites are actually allowed to be used in an educational context. So they're not infringing copyright, which a lot of people don't know when that is available to them. So it's just about playing that sort of coach role within schools and when you're chatting with people to allow them to know what is available out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The same thing's true in PowerPoint now. If you do your online, if you search for a picture within PowerPoint now to drop it in, obviously being a Microsoft thing, it does it through Bing rather than through Google image search and things. But again, it just tick the whole sort of Creative Commons license box. But again, if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, do you? And so it's really difficult for teachers to, like I mentioned the word murky before, it's difficult, isn't it? What are your thoughts on this, Mark?
Yeah, well, for me, I don't use social media to make resources and give stuff like that and mess around with images. So I don't have much on a take with copyright. I see it as an educator. We all know this stuff. It's not a hidden kind of thing or a secret. For me, it's all about the story. Like that's all social media is for me. You know, we go on Twitter, you move over to TikTok, you do whatever. Like it's about being able to tell your story, and I think that's what teachers need to know. They need to know how to tell their story, and they need to know where to tell it, because that's the whole thing that's going to keep you on these platforms. That's going to help you grow, and that's going to build your reputation. And it's all about, number one, knowing yourself, having meaningful interactions with people on these platforms, and then the next one is consistency, and that's how people trust you. You know, you are consistent, you're out there. For me, it's running. I always do run and rant. I go out and run. People might not like what I have to say, but they know that's my vibe. And so they can either jump on that boat and go along with that, or they can choose not to. And that's kind of how I build my reputation. And it's how I've done it for years. You know, I started in radio, I moved to television, and now when I went back into education, I searched for this way to connect with people. And it happened to be on Twitter now, and I'm actually moving off of Twitter and I'm moving over to TikTok, because I'm moving towards where the audience is, and I'm moving towards the audience of the student. And that's who I want to reach. That's who I want to talk to. And that's where they are. So for me, know yourself, have meaningful interactions, and be consistent, and people will trust you. And that's how you build your reputation online. That's it. Sorry to take us way off of don't copyright people's stuff.
Do you think on that? Sorry, Mark. I'll go on. I was just going to ask Mark, do you think, well, I've got sort of two questions for you then. Do you think teachers need to create their own brand? And from your time in a different space, so specifically TV, what's kind of been your biggest learning curve that you've taken and adapted to teaching?
So the first part, do people need to do it? People need to tell their story. Do you need to tell your story on Twitter? No. Do you need to tell your story on TikTok? No. But do you need to build your confidence to tell people your educational journey, whatever that is? Yes. And you need to tell that to your students. You need to tell that to the people down the hallway. You need to tell that to your administration, because that's important. That's how we all grow. You know, you need to know how Ollie down the hall got to where he is on that yellow couch. That's important. That's what I need to know. I don't need to just see you where you're at. I need to know how you got there. And that's when you can start helping people and giving tips to, hey, you know, I jumped onto Twitter, and if you follow this PLN, they'll kind of help you at the beginning. There's great guys on Twitter, and you can find those things.
to kind of get you going, the first 20 people. And, you know, not to be negative about that whole Twitter circle that you see now popping up, these images for people that don't know. It's like yourself in the middle, and then they show you like 40 people who you're in a bubble with. And, you know, if you want that, it's very easy to get it. But the point is to tell your story. And for me, if I go back in my timeline, it was all about trying to tell my story and reach as many people as I could. So I was a classroom teacher. Beijing Olympics happened, and I had the opportunity to go on the radio and teach the different sports in English and educate people in Hong Kong about what those sports were in an English way. And through a kind of a creative platform, we did it. And once I did that, I started having interactions with people I didn't know. And that kind of got me hooked. And that's what later on would bring me to Twitter, having interactions with people I don't know. I liked that. I would meet people who listened to what I was talking about and it engaged with them. It touched them in some way. And so that just got me hooked. And I started to tell my story to as many people as possible. So when I met someone in television, I told them I had a radio show. And then I was lucky enough to start a kids program that lasted almost half a decade in Hong Kong, reaching 1 million people a day. You know, so and those are the kinds of things that I kind of got hooked on, was that ability that as an educator, yeah, I could reach 30 kids in a classroom, or I could reach 300 people in a school. But there's these areas, these platforms for us to tell our stories and to reach so many more people. So when I got married, had a kid, moved to Abu Dhabi, got back into international teaching, I looked for that thing. Where can I do that? You know, I'm not going to be able to jump onto radio here on the first year. I'm not going to be able to make another television show. What can I do? And I pushed into Twitter, you know, and I started telling my story again. I started talking about running, the things that connected me, things that were important to me. And people gravitate to that because they can see it. They can believe that that's what you're about. Would I say my reputation is seamless? No, because I'm honest. I'm honest with who I am. I don't sugarcoat something and try to play some kind of little game so that people can, you know, you can see that on Twitter and all these things, people posting comments that they know will get likes, you know, but does it represent their true character? I don't know. So that's where I came from with that kind of journey. So do people need to be on Twitter or these things specifically? No. Do they need to be on YouTube watching this video? Probably yes. And number two, yeah, they need to be telling their story. So tell your story. That's what I push.
It's interesting you talk about telling your story. That's definitely an approach that Apple take with what they do. When I've gone to any of the sort of Apple Distinguished Educator Institutes and events, one of the things they talk about an awful lot, and you see it in their advertising and their commercials, you know, it's not about the product, it's about the story, but it's about the things that having the product enables you to do, the life it enables you to have, and all these different things. And so being able to really clearly articulate your story is really, really important. But different people, you know, some people might not have the same sort of confidence that you've got, Mark, to be able to get on camera. You know, a lot of guests we have on the show here, for example, they require a lot of hand-holding. They're nervous. They want to do like 5 checks before they come on so they can make sure their screen sharing is working. And is the lighting right enough? Is my ring light good enough? And all these different sorts of things. And so not everyone is... You know, part of the reason why I got into doing what I do now was to put myself in a position where I wasn't so nervous about public speaking. I went to a teaching meet with like 5 other people, and I was, you know, put me in front of 1,000 kids to do an assembly, not a problem. Put me in front of 2 colleagues to share something, nightmare, you know. And so it takes a long time to get yourself into a position where you're happy and confident about doing these things. And let's come to you on that front, please, because I know you deliver plenty, and you've done really well with the conferences you run and so forth and so on. But how have you got the confidence to do that sort of thing? What put you in a position where you're able to do those sorts of things?
I think we've all had to have the confidence. If you think about what's just happened, we've all had to get confident in front of a camera. Even anyone that doesn't enjoy being in front of a camera has had to push themselves out of that comfort zone to be able to just teach their students. And we've got to all agree that our number one thing that we all do is teach our students every single day and allow them great learning opportunities, whether that's through storytelling, whether that's through the experiences we give them. However we work with our students, we're going to have to get in front of a camera. And I think my principal put it brilliantly that we're riding an aeroplane that's not quite finished yet, and we're still building parts to it during this distance learning that we might not know about. I think for me it was more of I started off on Twitter 2010, and since then I've shared things that I think are important to educators to help them to improve. And I gave the example in the chat that when I first came over to the Middle East, I was 4 hours away from any other international school. So for me to connect with other like-minded individuals was key for my own professional development, to bounce ideas from other people. And I wasn't just using Twitter at the time, I was using Voxer, which is like a walkie-talkie app, which gave like a virtual staff room. I was using Periscope, and I was using YouTube Live. I was using lots of different avenues to be able to connect with people that I probably wouldn't necessarily connect with, because of you just don't get those opportunities to be able to do that. And I think technology allows us to create not just opportunities, but an education that allows all students to succeed, no matter what the background they're coming from. And as long as they have a device and an internet connection, you can learn anything you want to. And I think that's something that we all need to think about when we're actually teaching our lessons is, are we needed as a teacher? Personally, yes, because we have those personal relationships with the students, but can they learn a lot of the stuff that we're teaching them via the web? And we're getting more and more jobs that are being created that we never even knew existed 5-10 years ago, even a few years ago. So things are changing all the time, even in education. And for me, I just started sharing really good key content and things that I was trying out in my lessons.
It's a really good point, that, and
share things that are meaningful.
Yeah, it sort of resonates a lot there. With I remember when I first started using social media, and I ended up speaking to Mark somehow, and you know, he was like, "Well, who are you actually sharing it for? Are you sharing it as a sort of cathartic thing to get it off your chest?" And not in any sort of negative or positive light, but just for the sake of sharing something that you have learned from your experience with an education, or are you sharing stuff to get followers? And I thought, well, I'm sharing it for me. I'm not actually at this point, when I just started using social media, using it for anyone else. But then you do get to that point once you've got the confidence, don't you, that you want to start sharing your experience with others. Question for you then, Adam, based on your and feel free, gents, to chip in as well, based on having taught sort of internationally in various different locations, how can educators make sure that they're, you know, culturally sensitive, and where can they go to find, you know, information on that to make sure that they are you know, being culturally sensitive to the location that they're in?
I'm very fortunate. I've managed to work in 3 different countries now, and I'm always learning. I don't think there is ever a time where everyone's always going to get it right. But I think if you hold your hands up at times and say, listen, I made a mistake there. But I've always found just chatting with people that are in my school, in my local area, and find out what is culturally appropriate. And I put a couple of slides together that one of the things that Mark just said, and it was actually one of my slides that I put together, was I always think about this digital footprint and think about what are the things that I am posting. Would my grandparents, for example, be happy with what I'm posting? And would I be happy looking at something similar to that I'm posting 5, 10, 15 years down the line? And I think they're all things that we need to think about. And at the end of the day, it's a professional account. And these are the things that I'm always doing that are for a professional purpose. And we still have a professional responsibility as teachers. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. Something that you think about is, how do you conduct yourself in a classroom, and would you conduct yourself the same way in front of a class full of students? Because I know I wouldn't be swearing in front of a class. I wouldn't be being culturally insensitive. So these are all things that I take into consideration whenever I'm doing anything like that.
Mm-hmm. That presentation you mentioned, Adam, are you okay to bring it up quickly and run us through those slides?
Yeah, sure. I'll be honest, I put this together just this afternoon and as a bit more of a reflection piece.
Yeah, sure.
Just give me a sec.
And while Adam's bringing that up, Mark, you haven't got one. Baz, have you got some slides you wanted to share as well?
Yeah, but I can, we can get through them quickly. It's just some of the points have been raised, and it's just for discussions, really.
Okay, cool.
So these are just a couple of slides that I stuck together, and this is obviously me. What I was thinking about, we share lots of different things, and if you think of all the different platforms that we have, there are many different ways of sharing information, not only with your team that you're working with, but your admin, your students, your parents, your whole community. And these are all things that can be obviously looked at from different perspectives. And these is where we sort of have to be a little bit mindful that we do have this digital footprint. Everything that we do share can have maybe different interpretations at times. So there are things that we always need to think about. But something that I've tried to always use is looking at sharing some of my best content and some of the best things that I am either doing in a class or something that I've been working on. And that way, when you're building it away, you're building these resources to share. Well, I'm pretty sure we've all worked in departments that we've had members of staff that would lock some of their best resources away and not really allow them to be accessed. So allowing them to be shared is definitely a great way. But I think what we do have to remember is you have to take the positive and with the negative, and things that you do share, you have to be mindful of. You're going to get maybe feedback within that, and hopefully it's all constructive, but it's going to allow you to connect. And for me, that connection's key, but it's also going to allow you to grow. And allowing us to grow as educators with whatever we do share can definitely help you to think about maybe changing. And I think whenever any of us have had a lesson observation, we're always looking at how we can grow as educators to obviously make things better for the next time we do something. And when you do create that content, look at the different hashtags that you have. But believe in yourself when you are sharing, whether that's video, whether that is audio, podcast, like we're doing today, a roundtable discussion, but try and keep it positive where possible, because you never know when that might come back to get you. But be mindful of obviously everything that you're thinking about when you are posting, because someone is always watching. And that's something that you really need to think about when we are posting, whether you're posting that to the world for everybody to see, or you're keeping it private just for selected people to see. And also think about what we were discussing earlier about what is your school's take on social media, what is allowed to be posted and what's not allowed to be posted. And I know that ranges from school to school and from country to country. But this is like one of my big things, and Mark said it earlier, was about when you are posting, would you be happy with what you've posted in X amount of years' time? And would your grandparents be happy with what you're posting, or your parents? And these are all things that I'm definitely mindful of as we work through the different scenarios and some of the things we're talking about today. But this is just a little video. I don't know if you want to watch this video, or so it's 3 minutes, but it's just going over some of the points that we talked about. It's about managing your online reputation within one of the digital sessions within Google for Education. I saw on YouTube, and I thought it was quite appropriate for what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I don't know if we've got time for that tonight, Adam, but if we could, if you share the link back to us, one of us, and we can put it into the show notes on YouTube in this sort of section underneath. We'll also just for yourselves as well, we'll put your various socials and things into the sort of section on YouTube underneath there as well. Some really great advice in there, Adam, and it really resonates with me. And as someone I know who shared the sort of space and using social media like myself for some time now, I know from friends and colleagues that I've had over the years who like Matt Pullen's an old friend of mine, for example, who I've known that you've connected with many times over the years too, so it's really great to sort of connect with you and hear the messages you're sharing here tonight as well. So thank you very much indeed for that. Just showing to you for a second, Baz, you mentioned in the private chat here about confidence and taking time to build the confidence. How do you find that helpful for yourself then, given your context?
Yeah, just in reiterating from before, how I've been on social media on the platform for 7-8 years, probably longer. just using it to find information. But now the next stage, where as Mark was sharing, to share the story and what you're currently doing, rather than just thinking about followers and thinking about getting into certain groups where people are in their certain bubbles that you notice, rather than getting concerned with that, like you would, if you were a child and you were in a playground, even though you're an adult, you kind of feel that isolation at times. And now, in order to share your story, instead of being, worried about how many people are going to see it, it's a case of just building that up, communicating with like-minded people, whether it's one person a week, it doesn't matter. At least it's somebody that you're meeting, that you've got the opportunity to share ideas with and to reflect on it. And then you do need that kind of confidence to communicate with people or to approach them, because sometimes it does seem like it's a selling game and you're tagging people, and I've been victim to that as well, in recent times. It becomes like, how many hashtags can I fit in? How many people can I tag onto this? Can I get the retweets? And it's a subconscious thing that we're in. We teach kids about this. I'm a computer scientist, and we teach it through the computing curriculum, about the uses of social media, and then you don't realize actually you're partly involved in that, and even in your personal time, how you use your social media and so forth, and how it influences you. And I think as an educator, you kind of do need sometimes that acknowledgement, as you would, if you were line managing somebody and they've done a good job, you would give them feedback, or you would give them feedback to improve. As Adam was saying, you've got to be prepared for both the positive and the improvements. And in social media, when you are trying to build that network, when you are trying to, share your story, you do go through these phases. And I think that's where I am at personally, currently. But I think I've got over that initial hump, and it's a case of, listen, go with the flow. People will pick up on the story when they need to, and you just need to build your network. It doesn't happen overnight. It could take a year, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's really, really important point there about not rushing it and actually just authentically kind of growing your network. If you don't mind, I'd like to change tact massively, and throw it open to anyone. So Mark and I used this tool called Webfluential, and essentially what it does is it looks at your social media profile and it gives you a value as to how much you could charge per tweet. Should teachers make money through the sharing that they do on social media? And does this, or could this enhance or damage their reputation? What are people's thoughts on that?
I'd never heard of it, so I learned something new today.
Yeah,
If it come to you first, Mark. Yeah. So what do you think about that, Mark? I did the quick Webfluential search on yours, and it was it worked out on your accounts, Mark, that you could charge something between $105 to $130 per tweet if you were to use your account as an influencer, as part of some sort of influencer marketing.
Well, I'm mostly posting just debates about what is it called, a popsicle or an ice pop. So, I don't know if I could get that kind of money off of it, but I do know that, it's a platform. And it's what I want to kind of go back to. It's not about teaching people how to get really good on one thing. I think Adam said it best. He highlighted so many things that, people would wonder if those platforms even existed, some of them that he was talking about. And I think that's what we need to know, is that all these things are going to be changing. Twitter might not even be around in 4 years, who knows? But the idea of having a way to share your journey with someone and build a reputation, a brand about who you are is really important. I've worked with Adidas, Hypebeast, Herman Miller. I've been paid to do events, and all those things can come off of your social media platform. That's why they trust you, because they put you out there and they know someone is more willing to listen to you because you've built something. You have something to stick behind you of why they should listen to you, whether it's Adam and his resources and those kinds of things, or Ollie and his ring lights, or whatever it is. There's a reason why people are going to kind of tune in. And I think, if you can get paid from that, then more power to you. If if you believe in what it is that you're going to be a spokesman for, whether that's new Microsoft content or a nice pair of headsets from Bose, they're going to give it to you and you're going to say something nice, then more power to you as an educator. Why not?
I'll just put it out there. I wish I'd been given these for free. They weren't the cheapest headphones I've ever purchased.
Without a doubt.
Nice, kudos to you for spotting that, Mark. Adam's had to just run off. I'll answer the question for myself, Ollie. It's a weird position because I've got a few followers, and I won't tell you what the web credential thing says about my follower number and things. You're welcome to have a look for yourself if you want to, but I'd suggest you have a look at Ross McGill's before you look at mine. But it's a weird position because this goes back to the conversation I was having with Baz and talking about followers and things, because I've got a few followers, but I didn't get into using social media to get loads of followers. I got into social media to share and to learn and to connect with people and all those sorts of things. And I still even now get asked by people, how do you get more followers? How can I get as many followers as you? How come you've got so many followers? All this sort of thing. And I'm like, people are coming to me before. I've been tracking your account and you've got X followers this week, and I've only got a few followers compared to you. Why is that? And I'm like, people. The advice I share really is that it becomes a bit like a watch pot when you're trying to boil a saucepan. If you sat there watching it all the time, then that's what your focus is. And it's not about, like you've been sharing, Mark, about sharing your story, or it's not what you've been talking about, Adam, about sharing great resources and being mindful and those sort of things, and they say meaningful content. You're doing these things for the wrong reasons. And if you're sharing good stuff, and if you're being a good person, and if you're and we had a great guest on a few on I think it was episode 3, wasn't it, Ollie, with Barry Lee Cummings? And he runs the Cyber Safety UAE, and he does a bit around online reputation as well. And it's that whole thing of paying it forwards and just sharing great stuff. And if it resonates with people, it's like you and your story and the way you explain things, Mark. If people are into that, if it resonates with them, then they'll buy into it, and then they'll know what I'm about. But I'm not going to change what I'm about because of what other people might say or want or do or anything. This is me. This is how I do it. Sorry, go on, Mark.
And I think it's really important that people realize that there's many parts to their story. And I think that's what people should really see right now with Twitter and with these bubbles that are forming around them, that if they take a real look at it, is their following diverse? And I think we're all looking at diversity right now. Is it diverse? Does it actually express who you are as a person? Or have you tapped into a tiny little part of who you are? And that's the only people that you're constantly seeing. So if you want to get more followers, if you want to get more likes and all these things, share more about who you are. And eventually you'll find more people that, oh, wow, I didn't realize there was so many people that got my sense of humor. So I'm going to start posting a lot more of these witty comments on the side of Run and Rant, because actually you guys like them more than listening to me rant after I run. If that's how it is, then that's how it is. And I think you can find people who gel with you, and then that builds, again, back to your reputation of who you are as a person. And you don't want to kind of lock yourself into this tiny bubble of this is who this person is as an educator. You want to be diverse. And I think that's what people should really be looking at when they get on social media platforms.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that. I saw somebody from the UK, Noreen Khalid, was talking about looking at the circles and asking the question, how diverse actually is your PLN? Now, we're talking here about the tool called ChirpTy, CHIRPTY, which has just gone viral over the course of the last few days, with people doing a search based on their Twitter account, and it's showing circles, and you've got an inner circle and a middle circle and an outer circle. It's only recent interactions, really, based on volume. It's not a difficult thing that they've worked out and pulled into place here, but it is interesting, I think. And it goes a bit, I think, you made a comment in the chat, in the private chat, about a backslapping culture. Can you share a little bit with us about what you meant by that when you talked about the backslapping culture, Adam? I think I know what you mean, but to get your take on that. I think his screen might have frozen for a second. He's dropped off.
It's frozen.
It's interesting what Mark was just saying there about the who you are as a person, and I think that's what I've kind of been focusing on now in the last few weeks. Just sharing the content and the stories about what I believe in terms of industry and education working together. But I think what you can sometimes get involved with is that element of that bubble. And when you see people, you don't actually know whether that's who they are really, whether that's the genuine person, or is it there as a promotional element. And I think that's where sometimes you can get stuck into that bubble, because there are people out there who will promote themselves, and that's not really who they are, but they know that will get them views, or that's what will get them followers. And it's the same with young kids. When they see influencers, they tend to follow them, and they'll be promoting products that they don't necessarily believe in, and so forth. And I'm not saying that's anything wrong with that, as long as ethically what you're doing is correct. Then you need to make your living how you can. But that's the type of environment you can get involved with, and that can sidetrack you from actually your own persona and your vision. And I think that's important to raise, because when you are trying to get new staff involved into the PLN network and getting them to use social media to educate themselves, to improve themselves, sometimes if they have one or two negative experiences, that can put them off completely, and then it's very difficult to get them back on board. So just sharing those experiences and key messages from experts like yourselves, I think, will go a long way.
What was could you just sort of a lot of what we've been talking about tonight is really pertinent, and we've set up an initiative, Baz, with FPS Careers. Could you just sort of talk us through that briefly, and the rationale for doing that? Because I think that ties in quite nicely with what we're talking about this evening.
Yeah, thanks for raising that. It's basically a focus that I had a few years ago of bringing industry and education together, and bringing the opportunities that students normally wouldn't receive until they've graduated. And some students wouldn't have the opportunity to interact with industry professionals or industry projects, or even getting some insight into what their skills could do into the real world. And we often hear about how we're preparing them for the future, but what is actually going on, because we have the national curriculum that we have to cover. We're focusing on the examinations, and we might do the odd lesson, in terms of bringing the real world in, or we might have some speakers in, but it's not embedded. And that's what this careers and industry focus is around. It's to embed this on a regular basis, even for those non-academic students, or even for the most high achieving students. They need to experience something beyond the curriculum content on a regular basis, not just as a one-off. So thankfully, we've got some key partners, from industry, local and global, who are willing to get involved. What we don't want this is anything to do with a selling point or something for them just to experience and market. It has to be something meaningful, and it has to be something that all students can learn from. And for me, as Mark's point from earlier resonates. That's my passion, and that's my story, and that's what I want to bring forward, because I believe I would have grown, a lot faster, and I would have known about what I want to do a lot earlier had I had these opportunities at an early age. I'm not the academic student who will achieve. I'm not the student who will do the best in the exams, and more power to those students. But I think you need that experience of what your skills were actually doing to the real world as part of the curriculum. And thankfully, we've got the support of the KHDA with this, with the Rahal program. They allow us to work around the national curriculum and the jurisdiction. So hopefully we'll continue to share more success stories around that. But again, initially, if I look back, it was a case of how can I get this out to as many people as possible? But that was the wrong attitude. It shouldn't be about that. It's about sharing the story. And as you guys have shared today, people who are interested in will jump on board.
Yeah, and I think if your story is authentic, if you really believe it, then those things that Adam were talking about, where you have to check whether you would say it in the classroom or say it to a group of parents or whatever, those things you have to worry about less, because you're speaking to something and you believe in. You're not jumping on something that you saw on social media that night and deciding that you're going to be part of that conversation, and then you find yourself the next morning in trouble because you were talking about something where you were way out of your depth. and you accidentally posted the wrong image or you said the wrong thing, and you didn't mean to, but it's because that's not part of who you are. It's not part of your journey and your story. So I think if, and it goes back to what you were asking before, Mark, how do we get these teachers who come on here and want, a few different takes and check their lighting, and they get really nervous, and you get really nervous speaking in front of your colleagues. I think we just need to do more of it. We need to do more of the TED Talks in our schools. We need to know that people in our school system, that we value their stories, that we value who they are, and we're willing to listen. And once people share it and they realize, wow, I actually had something to say. And that was the reason why I started a podcast with Talim, and I won't speak too long about this point. It was the fact that I wanted to get the educators within my school community to know that a 15-minute podcast about how they got to sitting in that chair was important, and there was people who wanted to listen to it. And then they would find themselves walking around the campus and someone say, hey, I didn't know you were into mixed martial arts. They say, what? Yeah, I heard you on the podcast. I did that in college as well. And suddenly you're making these connections with people, and that's what it's all about. So I think we just need to, people in middle leadership roles, people in leadership roles need to push to provide opportunities for people in school to tell their stories, and then slowly push them to go into social media if that's where they feel comfortable. And then, you guys are a great example. You're putting, I won't say your money where your mouth is, but you are like taking steps forward to bring stories out from around the community and around the world with this show right here. So hats off to you guys for doing that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mark. I think it comes back to, sorry, Mark, go.
I was saying thank you.
Oh, right. Yeah, thanks. It goes full circle there, doesn't it, I think? Because all too often we can forget that, the most valuable resource in any educational system is the teachers, and they're the experts. So, providing as many platforms as you can for them to share for the benefit of the students can only be a good thing, really, can't it? That's my personal sort of take on that. Mark, did you have anything you want to say?
I'm just wondering if Adam needs to get himself on those ring lights, because he's very dark and mysterious there in the background.
I'm having Wi-Fi trouble and all sorts.
I did want to come back to you. We need to wrap up shortly because we try and make the show last an hour. There's 3 minutes left, and we've got some standard questions to come back to you guys with. But I wanted to ask you, Adam, because I'd asked you before. You said earlier about in our group chat about the backslapping culture. What did you mean by that, and how could we avoid it?
I think at times, we need to really just have a filter. And I think that's the best way of putting it. Whereas we look at, there's a lot of posts on there, but sometimes we don't look at it from a pedagogical point of view. And it looks like a great.
I think we just lost Adam for a second there. Let's hope he comes back.
Lost Adam.
Sorry. By what I meant was that backslapping culture is you might see a good idea on Twitter, and then straight away you'll see it being across the world doing exactly the same thing, no matter what the subject. Well, pedagogically, was that planned? Or was that just an idea that they saw and were thought, oh, we'll stick that in tomorrow's lesson? And I think sometimes we just need to be a bit more mindful of thinking about how does that relate to our students, and how do we also think about, is that part of the context that we're trying to achieve, or is it just a good idea? And I think it's about having that filter.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One thing that I've learned over the years is there is no one-size-fits-all thing in education. It's all contextual. What might work in Ollie's classroom would never work in Baz's, or would never work in Mark, and might work in mine. It's all about, sometimes it's just like the weather, with the impact on children and how they behave in your class. There's so much to think about. We're at the end of time tonight for this show, Ollie, aren't we? Are you ready, Ollie, to jump in with the first question for our guest, our first standard question?
Yeah, sure. So really, really quickly, because we're short of time, what book has influenced you most in your career, and why?
So should we go to
Adam, from the look of it?
Oh, I just think that's such a broad question, because there's so many great books that we can all think about and always put all across there. But I think one of the, from what I've just said, is that sort of Simon Sinek's Start with a Why. Why are we doing what we do, and why are we actually trying to portray things online or share things online, and think about the deeper context within that.
Brilliant choice, a brilliant book as well. Thank you, Adam.
I
How about
would,
yourself, Mark?
I would go anything from Mad Magazine from like 1987 to 1995. You know, keep it light, keep it simple. People take themselves way too seriously. You need to have a laugh. You need to be honest. You need to be able to laugh at yourself. And I think if you're looking about reputation, as we're talking to tonight, not everyone's going to like you. You're going to get comments, and you have to realize that's life, and you have to be able to just roll with it, laugh with it, smile at people, and keep things positive, as Adam was saying before. So that's the best way to do it. So Mad Magazine always did that for me. Sorry, it's not really a book, but Alfred E. Newman forever. Peace.
Brilliant stuff, Mark. How about yourself, Baz?
Yeah, I think you can read books that do give you some ideas, like The Power of Now, in terms of how you want to perceive yourself. What is the world around you? What does it mean? But often what happens with books, especially if you don't take into consideration the reality of how you can apply it, it doesn't really mean anything. It just makes you feel good sometimes. So I think when I've read the odd book, I try and read it where I know I can use it and I will actually action it. And something like the Power of Now. But to be honest, a lot of them have been autobiographies, hearing other people's success stories and adversities. I'm sure everybody has read Muhammad Ali's autobiography. It's just a case of what can you relate to? And when it's a reality, when it's a real story, and when people have faced real adversity, it gives you that kick up the backside as well, when you relate it to somebody who's been through a lot worse and come out on the other side a lot stronger. What is a few tweets that you're chasing? It's nothing in comparison. So for me, I do like to look at those, not necessarily influencers or celebrities, but just stories in general of success through adversity.
That's very good. Thank you so much for that insight there, Baz. Thank you. The final question that we have standard each week is one which relates to technology, and so I'll start with you, Baz. Sorry to get you twice in a quick succession here, but let's go back the other way around this time. So I'll ask you, Baz, and come to you, Mark, and then finish off with you, Adam. What sort of one ed tech tool or tip helped you most in your job? Okay, so it could be a keyboard shortcut, it could be a particular tool, it could be a feature of an app, that sort of thing. But what helps you most with the work that you do, Baz?
What helps me most? It's interesting. I would say screenshots. Just taking screenshots of things you need. But I think what helps me most in terms of the use of technology, especially in the last 12 weeks or so, being able to record yourself and repeat and add to the content has been really, really helpful. It's something that I've tried to put into PD sessions for many years, and you have staff who will not change their ways, but now they're being forced to change their ways. They're seeing the outcomes, and you can now say to them, remember a few years ago when I showed you this was a powerful tool. So I think recording and then being able to add questions into your recordings has been a real game changer.
So how are you doing that, Baz?
I either use the Microsoft Streams and then add the forms within that, or I use the YouTube editors.
Oh, brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you so much, Baz. And how about yourself, Mark?
Mine would be two parts. I would definitely say, as an art teacher, using Padlet, and not to shout out any one particular platform, but Padlet has been amazing for allowing a quick gallery of work with comments. And again, it hits with likes, unfortunately, sometimes, but it's also a good way to gauge reaction from students about what they're interested in and how they're reacting to an online gallery. So I love Padlet. And I think the number two thing is listen to your students about technology. And so as an art teacher, I've been constantly listening to my students over this continuous learning 3 months, and they have totally encouraged me to jump onto the Procreate drawing platform. So I will be spending the next 2 months learning how to be a Procreate illustrator and bringing that into my classroom in September 2020. So listen to your students and make a Padlet.
Well, my top tip for you, Mark, is if things open up enough again, Apple do run free training sessions on how to use Procreate for educators. And I'll do that in the Dubai Mall and at Yas Mall as well. If you're Abu Dhabi, aren't you? So yeah, the Apple Store in Yas Mall will run sessions on Procreate in store. So you can grab yourself a cup of coffee from Paul and go upstairs and
Here we go.
a free training session.
Do some social distance drawing. That's where it's at. Can't wait.
Brilliant. So same question then to wrap up with you yourself, Adam. Your favourite sort of ed tech tool or tip to help you what you do every day?
I think my mantra is work smarter, not harder, and I constantly working with that. And definitely over these last few months, collaboration's been key, and I think we'll all agree with that. I've used a lot of Seesaw within my lessons, but for me, like the best tip that I'm going to give you today is just in Google Chrome, close the tab down, press Command Shift T or Control Shift T, depending on the platform, and load that page back up again. And the amount of times I've closed the register down and I need to get it back up quickly or something like that, that's like completely, could be my next pair of trainers or something like that. But you know what it is? It's definitely something like that to get that last tab back up.
That's a super helpful tip. It's really good for classroom management as well, classroom behaviour management, because students often go onto the, they'll be on a site they shouldn't be on. And as you start to sort of patrol in the classroom, they'll close that tab down, but your teacher radar knows they've been doing something they shouldn't have been doing. So a quick Control Shift T or a Command Shift T, like you just said, Adam, to bring that page back up again. Like they think you're like some sort of magician, don't they? When you find they've been playing, I don't know, Pac-Man or whatever it is they shouldn't have been doing.
And once you do that, it's a perfect opportunity to talk about reputation, right? There we go.
Boom.
And
That's a perfect way to end the session this evening. Ollie, you wanted to mention next week's show?
Yeah, just next week's show is episode 10. It's the last in this series. We're going to have a little pause because we want to essentially, mirror the behaviours that we want to see in others and educators. So we're going to take a break for a few weeks before we start up with season 2. But next week's show is going to be all about planning for opening schools in September under the new guidance. We've got some great guests coming on that. We've got Alan Williamson, who's CEO of Talim. We've also got Sasha Crabb, who is the principal of Victory Heights Primary School in Dubai. Neil Oates, who's the vice principal of Star Midriff School in Dubai. So it should be really interesting to hear the different plans, structures that they've got in place ready for opening to students again back in September. So please do tune in.
Superb. Yeah, really looking forward to that conversation next week. And thank you so much, Baz and Mark, Adam, for joining us today. It's been a slightly different format for us with the way we have conversations, but I think it's been really, really useful and worthwhile. It's been great. We didn't plan what we were going to talk about in terms of what you were saying, what we were saying, but it's been great to have that consistency of sort of approach and ideas and what have you from all of us. So thank you ever so much. If you're viewing on the live stream, then please don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching after the event, then obviously hope you have a great rest of the week. But for now, it's time for myself and Ollie and Adam and Mark and Baz to say goodbye. So thank you very much for joining us.
thank you, guys. Have a good week.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.